Chapter 15. Showing the profound impact of a brief confinement and the unspoken understanding it fosters.
For God's sake, don't take that shot now. Wait 30 seconds.
Carrie lowered her camera, eyebrow raised. Excuse me? Crispin nodded toward the penitentiary wall she'd been about to photograph.
The light's wrong. The sun's about to clear that cloud. And then,
He checked his watch with a dramatic flourish.
in approximately 23 seconds, that shadow will disappear, and the original chisel marks will be visible.
She glanced between him and the wall, skeptical. You've memorized the cloud patterns?
Hardly.
He tapped the comprehensive Port Arthur handbook he'd been carrying since they arrived.
But I've read about the optimal viewing conditions for the eastern wall. Page 73, if you're interested.
Of course you have, she said, shaking her head but kept her camera down. 17 seconds later, she counted, the sun emerged fully from behind a passing cloud, and the sandstone wall transformed. The slanting light caught every groove and chisel mark, revealing the painstaking labour of long dead hands. The wall was suddenly alive with texture, a visual record of countless forced hours, countless silenced lives. Bloody hell, she breathed, raising her Leica.
Told you.
He didn't try to hide his smugness. All right, Professor, you win this round. Click. But I'm the one with the photograph.
A fair division of labour. I provide the historical context. You capture the ephemeral moment.
Ahead of them, Sharon from the cruise ship was shepherding the main tour group toward the military officers' quarters, her voice carrying clearly across the grounds as she explained the strict hierarchy of Port Arthur's society. She'd already given them several pointed looks as they lagged or wandered off path, but had mostly resigned herself to their semi-detached participation. Crispin was, after all, a VIP guest lecturer, and Carrie had politely explained her need for people-free shots. We should probably catch up, Carrie said, though she made no move to do so. The morning light was too perfect, and without the tour group cluttering up her shot, why rush?
Probably.
Crispin agreed, also not moving. He knelt beside the wall, his fingers tracing a particularly deep groove.
Did you know each convict had a quota? 45 stones per week, regardless of the hardness of the sandstone block they were assigned.
And if they didn't meet it?
Flogging, solitary confinement, reduced rations, the full Victorian menu of misery, I'm afraid.
His eyes were unfocused, his gaze turned inward to a place she couldn't see. He ran his hand lightly over the surface.
You can see the different hands. This mason was skilled, even consistent strokes. This one here,
He moved a metre down the wall.
was either exhausted or untrained. The marks are erratic, desperate.
Carrie moved closer, seeing exactly what he meant. She knelt down, framing a shot that captured both sections of wall. The record of 2 lives, side by side.
Exactly.
His voice was quiet, almost reverent. He blinked, seeming to return to himself.
That's what I was trying to say yesterday about Cameron's photographs. They're not just images, they're records of moments, of lives. Intimate little windows into people long gone.
And all this time, I thought you were only a stuffy academic. She gave him a look of amused appraisal. He let out a short, self-deprecating laugh, a sound warmer and deeper than she would have expected.
I am. But I'm trying to be
He searched for the word.
better.
The tour group had disappeared around a corner. Carrie straightened, glancing at her watch. Come on, Professor. Let's go rogue. I want to see this place without 20 people backing into my shots.
Agreed. Though I must say, Sharon's version of Port Arthur is rather sanitized. All architectural appreciation and not enough human suffering.
As opposed to your cheery tales of flogging and starvation? Carrie countered. Next, you'll be telling me ghost stories and expecting me to swoon into your arms. He coloured slightly.
I prefer to call it contextually enriched. The ghosts are merely a historical footnote, though quite interesting ones, if you're ever curious.
Right, got it. I'll call it nightmare fuel and be done with it. They walked together across the open green, where immaculate lawns had replaced the bare dirt yard where convicts once stood for hours in the rain and sun. It's a strange thing, Carrie said, gesturing at the perfect grass. All this beauty sitting on top of so much misery. She stopped and turned to look at him. How do you do it? She asked suddenly.
Do what?
Live with all this knowledge, all these stories of suffering. He considered the question, his pace slowing.
I compartmentalize, I suppose. See it as data, as patterns, as a story with both darkness and light. You have to, really, or you'd go quite mad thinking about it all.
That's not what you were doing back there. She nodded toward the wall they'd left behind. When you were touching those chisel marks, you weren't seeing data. He stopped walking. For a long moment he was utterly still, his gaze fixed on something beyond the ruins, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, tinged with something like confusion.
No, I wasn't. That's new.
Good new? Bad new? 50 Shades of new? His smile was tight.
Uncomfortable new, but necessary, I think. Like getting new spectacles and suddenly realizing how blurry everything was before.
They caught up with the tour group at the church ruins, where Sharon was addressing the assembled visitors.
The convicts sat here,
Sharon was saying, indicating the central area where stone outlines still marked the floor.
The military officers and their families had pews at the front, and the civil staff sat at the sides. The commandant had his own box pew.
The church stood open to the sky, its roof long gone, its arched windows framing perfect rectangles of blue.
And believe it or not,
Sharon continued with a bright smile.
this church is still used for special events. I was married right here 6 years ago.
She laughed.
On a fine day, thank goodness.
The tour group dutifully chuckled. Carrie lingered as they moved on, composing a shot through one of the empty window arches, capturing a view of the bay beyond. Crispin stood beside her, silent. "What are you thinking?" she asked.
That even the most beautiful spaces can be prisons.
He said quietly.
They were forced to worship here, forced to hear about divine judgment and eternal damnation, while living through an earthly version of both.
His words landed on her with unexpected weight, a nudge on her thoughts. The architecture of faith as another form of control.
Precisely. And not only for the convicts, you know. The guards, the soldiers, the officers' families, they were all prisoners of faith and dogma in their own way, bound by the same rigid structures, the same unyielding expectations. Their cages were more comfortable, rather like...
He stopped himself abruptly. Rather like what?
Oh, nothing. Drawing historical parallels where they don't belong. Bad academic habit.
The whiplash between Sharon's happy wedding memory and Crispin's grim historical reality left Carrie speechless. Her planned quip died on her lips. And some of us are still in those cages today. She gestured toward the tour group, now moving away from the church. All of us are, in one way or another. His gaze held hers, sharp and analytical, as if he were trying to read the fine print of her soul.
Some more than others.
She moved to another window, framing a different shot. I'm trying to capture that. The beauty and the oppression together. He followed her, looking through the arched stone at the waters of Mason Cove.
You won't get it with the ruins by themselves. You need the contrast, the view out, the promise of freedom that was always visible, but never attainable.
That's exactly what I'm trying to frame. She glanced at him, surprised. How did you know?
I've been watching you work.
He said simply.
Not in a strange stalkerish way, mind you, all above board. Just observing, professional curiosity.
Creepy but useful, she quipped, though the comment lacked bite. Sharon appeared at the church entrance, her pleasant smile strained at the edges. She tapped her watch pointedly.
We're moving on to the separate prison now. If you'd like to stay with the group.
We'll be right there.
Crispin assured her with his most charming smile.
Capturing the ecclesiastical light, fascinating architectural features. We'll catch up in a moment.
As Sharon walked away, Carrie whispered, I think we're wearing out our welcome.
We'll be good for a bit, until the next interesting historical feature distracts us completely.
The tour moved on, and they followed, staying at the back of the group. Sharon led them toward a squat, severe building set apart from the others.
The separate prison was built in 1849.
Sharon explained as they approached the entrance.
It represented a shift in penal philosophy from physical to psychological punishment. Instead of floggings, prisoners faced isolation and silence.
They filed through the narrow entrance. The temperature dropped several degrees. Carrie's footsteps echoed against stone, bouncing back from the high ceiling. The air smelled of damp stone and old metal, like wet coins. The prison was laid out like a cross, with cells lining each wing and a central surveillance point where the wings met. Thin, dusty shafts of light filtered through high, barred windows, emphasizing the gloom rather than dispelling it.
Convicts spent 23 hours a day in their cells.
Sharon continued, her voice dropping to match the surroundings.
They were permitted 1 hour of exercise alone, in small yards. They were forbidden to speak. When moved around the prison, they wore hoods to prevent recognition or communication.
Carrie raised her camera, capturing the narrow corridor with its row of cell doors, each with a small Judas window for observation.
The guards wore felt slippers.
Crispin murmured close to her ear, his voice barely audible.
To silence their footsteps. Imagine being locked in here, not knowing if you were being watched, never hearing another human voice. Absolutely terrifying, really.
Psychological torture, she whispered back.
That was the point. Break the spirit instead of the body.
Sharon was leading the group toward one of the wings.
The prisoners were kept busy with monotonous tasks. Some picked oakum, unraveling old ropes. Others moved paddles through sand, a particularly useless activity designed solely to occupy the hands and exhaust the body.
Carrie recoiled slightly at this detail. A sickening lurch of recognition hit her. Moving sand. How many hours had she spent on her own version of that? The endless cycle of care, the meals prepared and forgotten. The same questions answered over and over. The routine that never led anywhere. She pressed her lips together, suddenly unable to find a witty response. The central area opened into the prison chapel, a strange and disturbing space. Instead of normal pews, it contained rows of wooden stalls like upright coffins, each with high sides.
Each prisoner stood in his own separate stall.
Sharon explained.
The design ensured they could see only the chaplain, not each other. The religious service was part of the Reformation process, another opportunity to reflect on their sins.
Carrie moved closer to one of the stalls, running her fingers along the edge of the divider. The wood was smooth, worn by time and the countless hands that had gripped it over the years.
A modern reconstruction, of course.
Crispin said, his hand resting on one of the wooden dividers.
The only time they were allowed to make noise was during hymns. Can you imagine it? Men starved of sound, of human connection, suddenly permitted to sing. They would have roared, filled this space with a desperate chorus, like caged birds suddenly remembering they have wings.
Their only freedom, Carrie murmured.
Exactly.
Crispin nodded, holding her gaze.
Their one outlet in a life of enforced silence.
They looked at each other across the narrow stall. Carrie was suddenly aware of the sound of her own breathing, the way he held himself perfectly still, his hand gripping the wooden divider until his knuckles paled. Their shared horror at what they were seeing. Yes, but something more. A recognition that needed no words. The tour moved on, through the wings of cells, past the exercise yards with their high walls and small patches of sky. Sharon kept up her professional commentary, guiding them deeper into the prison's grim reality. Carrie peered into one of the cells as they passed. I always pictured them as being pitch black?
No,
Crispin said quietly.
the darkness was isolation, not visual. They could see their cell walls, their monotonous tasks, their own hands. That was the point. Endless hours with nothing but your own thoughts, your own regrets, like being locked in a room with your greatest critic who happens to be yourself.
That sounds worse somehow, she said, her earlier joking tone completely gone. Seeing the same walls, day after day, the same square of sky. He nodded.
Many did go mad. The human mind isn't designed for such isolation.
Or such pointlessness, she added softly. The tour reached the far end of the eastern wing, where Sharon stopped before a heavy wooden door unlike the others. This one had no window, no way to see in or out.
This,
Sharon said, her cheerful tour guide voice dropping to something more solemn.
is one of the punishment cells for those who broke the rules of silence or otherwise misbehaved. Unlike the regular cells, this offered absolute darkness, absolute silence, sometimes for days at a time.
The group murmured, crowding forward to peer at the forbidding door.
How long would someone be kept in there?
An elderly woman asked.
It varied,
Sharon replied.
anywhere from 12 hours to several days, depending on the offense.
And what were the offences?
A man in a striped shirt had his camera raised.
Speaking, failing to complete tasks, sometimes looking at a guard the wrong way.
Sharon glanced at her watch.
We need to move on. Our next stop is the Commandant's house. Some spooky stories to be told there.
The group shuffled forward, following Sharon down the corridor. Carrie hung back, staring at the heavy door. Crispin remained beside her, neither of them speaking until the voices of the tour group had faded.
You want to go in, don't you?
He asked quietly. She nodded. Do you think we can? He stepped forward and tried the door handle. It turned easily, the door swinging outward with a low creak.
After you, though perhaps not the most conventional tourist experience.
Carrie hesitated for a heartbeat before stepping through into the shadows. The door closed behind them with a soft thud. No light penetrated, not even a crack around the doorframe. The darkness was almost complete, disorienting. I can't see a thing, she whispered. Her voice sounded strange, oddly flat, as if the darkness was swallowing the sound.
That's the point,
Crispin replied from somewhere to her right. The soft blue glow of his watch face illuminated his features, ghostly in the darkness.
No light, no sound, no sense of time passing, and nothing to distract from one's own thoughts.
Carrie fumbled for her phone, the screen flaring to life and casting harsh shadows across the small space. The cell was perhaps 2 meters by 1, with a stone bench against one wall and nothing else. No bed, no toilet, no comfort of any kind.
Turn it off,
Crispin said softly.
They didn't have phones.
She hesitated, then switched off her screen. She saw Crispin's watch face go dark as well. The darkness rushed back, absolute and oppressive.
There's a bench against the wall,
Crispin said.
They would have sat there.
She shuffled tentatively, hands outstretched, until her fingers met cold, rough stone. She lowered herself onto the bench, the chill immediately seeping through her jeans. She heard Crispin settle beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could sense his presence, feel the slight shift of air as he moved. Crikey, she whispered. It's properly dark, isn't it?
Absolute darkness. Some men lost their eyesight in these cells, others lost their minds. Rather horrifying to think about, actually.
How long did Sharon say they'd be kept in here?
Days. They lost track of time completely. No way to mark the hours. No way to know if it was day or night.
The darkness pressed against her skin, a physical weight. Her eyes strained uselessly for light, for form, for anything to anchor her in the void. Can you imagine? She asked. Days of this. Not knowing if it was night or day, if anyone was coming back for you.
They'd scratch marks.
Crispin said softly.
On the door, walls, the floor. Anything to prove they existed. That time was passing, like leaving a trace of humanity in an inhuman place.
She felt an overwhelming urge to reach for her phone, to banish this crushing darkness with artificial light. But she resisted, trying to experience what the prisoners had experienced, if only for a few minutes. Her mind filled with images, none of which she could see, but all of which felt suddenly, painfully vivid. A convict sitting in this very spot nearly 2 centuries ago, counting heartbeats, fingernails bloody from scratching at stone. Lucy in her hospital bed, confined by broken ribs and infection. Her mother at home, trapped in a body that betrayed her more each day. And Crispin, the man sitting a hand's breadth away, who had filled books with human suffering but walled himself off from feeling it. Until now. Until her question had cracked something open in him. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with all the things they hadn't said, all the prisons they hadn't named, all the doors they hadn't yet opened.
When you asked if my ghosts were disappointed,
He said finally, his voice barely above a whisper.
I'd never considered them as having opinions. They were subjects, data points, not people with expectations I could fail.
I know, she said.
But they did have expectations, didn't they? The dead. And the living. Good Lord, the living most of all.
His voice caught slightly.
I've been rather disappointing on that front, I think.
In the absolute dark, she was acutely aware of him beside her, the slight shift of his weight on the stone bench, the sound of his breathing, the faint warmth radiating from his body only centimetres from hers. There was a tension in the darkness, a powerful urge to reach out, to bridge the small physical gap between them as they had begun to bridge the larger one. But neither moved. The moment held, suspended in the darkness, fragile and powerful at once.
We should go,
he said finally.
The group will have moved on by now. We can get some photos without them in the way, or catch up with them, or whatever you prefer, really.
Yes, she agreed but made no move to stand. In a minute. There was something about this darkness, this shared confinement, that felt strangely like freedom. As if, in this place designed to break the human spirit, they had found a moment of genuine connection, of understanding without the need for words. When they finally did rise and open the door, the sunlight was blinding, painful. Carrie blinked, the world resolving slowly back into colour and shape and sound. Crispin stood beside her, his face in profile against the light. The mask was gone, leaving behind an expression that was raw and unguarded. Or perhaps, she thought, it was only that she was seeing him differently.